everyone, and welcome back to another video tutorial. In this video tutorial, I'll show you how to draft the back pants pattern. Here are the measurements you'll need and how to calculate them. You may not need all the measurements. For example, in this tutorial, I omitted the thigh measurement. It's best to take your measurement and do all your calculations before starting your drafting process. That way you could just dive into the drafting process without any delay. I gave examples of how all the measurements are calculated so that you too will understand how to do the calculations based on your measurements. Just like we did with the front, to start out you will need a piece of drafting paper that is long and wide enough to cover the length and width of your pants back pattern. Make sure all the edges of your paper are straight. Having a straight edge on all four corners of your paper serves as a guide to having a straight line during your drafting process. From the top edge of the paper, come down 2 inches, then square a horizontal line across your paper. This line will represent the waistline. Because my roller is already 2 inches wide, so I'm just going to use the width of my roller to draw my horizontal line across the paper. With the paper facing you, draw a 1 inch to 1.5 inch line on the right edge of your paper that is the length of your pants, your desired pants length. This line will represent the side seam of the pants. This tutorial is for ankle length pants, so I draw a line that is long enough to cover my pants length of 41 inches. From the corner of the 1 inch vertical line and the top horizontal line, measure a quarter of your hip circumference. Use the calculation on the screen to calculate your hip circumference. Continue measuring a quarter of your hip circumference at different points along the side seam line. Measuring a quarter of your hip circumference at different points would ensure that you have a straight line. I measured 11.25, which is a quarter of my hip circumference at different points along the side seam line. Then connect all the points with a straight line. This line will represent the center back line. Measure along the center back line your desired pants length, then mark that point. Do the same for the side seam line. Measure along the side seam line your desired pants length, then mark that point. Then connect the 2 points with a horizontal line. That horizontal line will represent the ankle level or the ankle line. From the waist point, measure along the side seam and center back line the high hip depth. The high hip depth is usually 3 to 4 inches from the waist. Then connect with a horizontal line and label high hip. Here is a quick tip. Always draw your lines and marks with a pencil first so that you can correct any mistake before going over the lines and mark with a marker. From the waist point again, measure along the side seam line the hip depth. And measure the hip depth along the center back line as well. Connect the 2 points with a horizontal line and label hip level. Next measurement is the crotch. From the waist point, measure along the center back line the crotch depth. Measure the crotch depth along the side seam line. Then connect the 2 points with a horizontal line and label crotch level. From the waist point, measure along the center back line the knee length. From the waist, measure the knee length along the side seam line. Here I'm just double checking my measurement with a straight ruler. Double check your measurement as often as you can. Then connect the 2 points with a horizontal line and label knee level. Since we've already measured the ankle level earlier, just label the horizontal line that represent the ankle level. To recap, we have a rectangle that is the outline of our pants strap, and the length of the rectangle is based on our desired pants length. Again, this tutorial is for an ankle length pants. If your desired pants length is at the knee, then your rectangle will stop at the knee. Have our waistline, high hip line, hip level line, crotch level line, knee level line, and our ankle level line. And all the width of the horizontal line are 1/4 of your hip circumference. Next, we're going to calculate the midpoint of the waist and crotch point along the center back line. As usual, I like to use the tape measure trick. Measure the distance between the 2 points and then fold the tape measure to find the midpoint and mark. Do the same along the side seam and mark the midpoint. Next step is to calculate and draw the crotch extension. Calculate the crotch extension. Measure the crotch level line from side seam to center back point or vice versa. Then extend the crotch line by half of the measurement of the crotch line. Next, draw a 2-inch diagonal line from the corner of the extension. Like I said earlier, first draw your line with your pencil so that you could correct any error, then use your marker. At the waist, come in or square in 3/4 of an inch from the center back line, then extend that point upward by 1/4 inch. Next, connect all the 4 points. Connect the upper part of the crotch with a straight ruler. Then use a curve ruler to connect the lower half. Use which ruler helps you best from the crotch curve. Next, extend the crotch line by 1/2 inch out at the extension end. And then square in by 1/2 inch at the other end. The next step is to find the midpoint of the 2 points on the crotch line. Measure the distance of those 2 new points on the crotch line and find the midpoint and mark. As usual, I'm using the tape measuring trick. Then draw a straight line up to the waist and down to the ankle. That line will represent the grain line. To get an accurate straight line, measure the distance from the center back point to the midpoint mark along the crotch line. Then transfer that measurement onto the hip line and high hip line. Measure that distance also along the knee line and the ankle line. Then draw a straight line connecting all the points. Next, we're going to do the waist calculation, and you have to take into account how many waist darts you want. I am doing 2 darts at the waist for the purpose of this tutorial, and each dart will be 1 inch wide. From the 3/4 mark, measure 1/4 of your waist circumference plus 2-inch dart intake. Again, from the 3/4 mark, measure your dart placement. Your dart placement is your bust span divided by 2. That's your apex to apex or nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2. Then from the dart placement mark, measure 1 inch for the first dart. Then from that point, measure 1 inch and 1/4. Then from that point, measure another 1 inch for the second dart. Then find the midpoint of each dart. Next, draw the dart legs. Each dart is 4.5 inches long. Next, draw the waist curve. Use a French curve ruler to connect the 1.25 inch raised point to blend into the waistline. Next, draw the side seam. Use a French curve ruler to draw the side seam. Go over all the pencil line with a marker to make it more visible. Next, we'll need to draw the knee line and the ankle line. Measure 1/4 of the knee circumference on either side of the grain line at the knee level line. Measure 1/4 of the ankle circumference on either side of the grain line at the ankle line. The next step is to draw the side seam line, which is the outer seam line. Connect all the points along the side seam line. Use a French curve ruler to connect the upper side of the side seam. Align the French curve ruler to touch the 2 points on the upper side of the side seam, then draw your curve. From here on, you could use a straight ruler to connect the crotch point to the knee point. I prefer to use my French curve ruler to connect the crotch point to the knee point. Align the ruler to touch those 2 points, then draw your line. Then to finish up, use a straight ruler to connect the knee point to the ankle point. Then curve the knee point with a soft curve. Next, draw the curve of the inner seam, which is the inner thigh. Use a French curve ruler to connect the crotch point to the knee point. Connect the remaining points. Connect the knee point to the ankle point. If the knee point is sharp, soften the curve just like you did the other side. To draw the ankle seam allowance, come down 2 inches from the ankle line and draw a horizontal line. My ruler is 2 inches wide, so I just use my ruler to draw the horizontal line. Then fold the paper at the ankle line. Then trace the line on both sides of the pants like so. This is done so that you will not run out of fabric when sewing your pants hem. If you come straight down, you will run out of fabric, or you won't have enough fabric to sew your hem properly. Next, we'll need to draw the dart peak by closing the darts. Fold the dart legs closest to the center back line on one of the darts. Run a tracing wheel over the fold excess of the dart. Do the same for the second dart. Fold the dart leg closest to the center back line on the second dart. This will create a diamond or an inverted V impression. Go over the impression with your marker to make it more visible. Then add the 1/2 inch seam allowance all around your sloper to make it into a pattern. Extend both dart legs to the seam allowance line. Here is a look of both pants strap side by side. After I finished, I realized that I raised the waist on the front pants and did not raise the waist on the back pants. So to be consistent, I dropped the waist on the front pants back to its original position to match and to be consistent with the back pants. I redrew the side seam curve as well. On the subject of being consistent, I want to point out 2 ways you can draw the side seam curve. From the halfway point, you can draw the curve to touch the crotch point, or start the side seam curve from the hip point to the crotch point. Whichever way you choose, be consistent with that method for the front and back pants. Okay everyone, we've come to the end of this tutorial. If I have made the concept of drafting a back pants pattern a little bit easier to understand and helped further your fashion designing experience, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up, share and leave your comment down below. Until my next video, bye!